All right, everybody, welcome back to the God-Centered Recovery Podcast. I'm super excited to be back at you again. So I got a special guest. We connected on Instagram,
Yeah.
which is really awesome, brother. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Tim, my name is Erik Allen. Run two podcasts. One is the Top Rated MMA podcast. One is the Bearded Biz podcast. One is obviously tailored towards the MMA fans and where I interview fighters and highlight fighters. And the other one is really where I talk with what I call entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. My wife and I live here in Coeur d'Alene. We're transplants. I grew up in Tri-Cities, Washington, came out here in 2016. And yeah, it's been a fun adventure. God's kind of led us through this crazy path to get where we are today. But it's so many awesome doors that have opened up for us in the last few years, and just awesome blessings for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother. Man, I started this entrepreneurial journey just a couple years ago.
Okay.
I'm almost 40 now, but a little bit of a late bloomer.
Yeah.
If I could have grabbed a hold of it a long time ago, I could have been a lot farther along. But
Sure.
tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey there.
It's been fun. We launched Top Rated MMA in 2012 as an apparel company.
Okay.
And we really just, when we started, it was like back in the days of Tap Out and all these other MMA elite type brands. And so my wife was the genius, and she says, how do you make your brand different than any other brand out there? And the first thing that she came up with was, let's make it 100% American made. And at the time, we were probably one of maybe two brands that actually did that and focused on that. And so immediately we connected with a company an organization called Hire Heroes USA, which was started by Brian Stain, who was also a UFC fighter. And they help veterans and their families transition into the workplace with free job placement and job training. And so we started this shirt company back in 2012. It blew up way faster than we were prepared for. And over the last 7 years, we had these ups and downs where I'm excited and not so excited. And, a typical entrepreneur mindset, right? Like, oh man, I feel like doing that. Oh no, I don't, And at one point I even put the business up for sale. I was just like, oh, I'm so done with it. I'm just not doing it. I'm excited about it. And then I started our podcast in 2017. I really just wanted to ask fighters, like, why do you want to get into a cage and get punched in the face? I've never done that. I love the sport. I love being on this side of the cage. But they have such interesting stories. I've now talked over to 100 plus fighters, and all of them have such interesting stories of how they became fighters. Some of them are in federal prison and they can't get a job because they have felonies on the record. Some of them are like, I just love to fight. I love to go in there and see what I can do to my body and push it. And so it's just cool to do that. And so that's opened up doors for us to sell more apparel and really open up the doors in regards to me covering the local MMA events and things like that. So yeah, it's been a fun journey, man.
That's awesome. Hey, during that time, because everybody knows entrepreneurship is scary.
It is.
It's a lot easier, when you got God in your life and you got this anchor and this trusting, but I tell you personally, it's scary, right?
It is.
So tell us what was like one of the hardest moments, like you're going through this process and you're just like, man, there's one time I'm just like, I'm going on Indeed.com. I'm getting me a job.
It's totally that way, and I still work a full-time job. I have the blessing of being able to work from home as well. And so I actually get up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week to work on my business. And then at about 7:30ish, I kind of shift from this computer to this one here and I start work, and I do that till 5 o'clock. And there definitely is days where, like I said, the excitement is there, the excitement is not. Over the last couple of years, I've really had this kind of hockey stick excitement going on. It's been fun. And even through the years of the slow times, I think God's always put it in my heart to be an entrepreneur. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started at 10 years old mowing lawns, and for 2 years I mowed lawns and I had like 14 customers, and, I was making a couple $100 a month at 10 years old. And that kind of sparked my idea. I was like, man, someday I will be a full-time entrepreneur. And I'm not there yet, but we're getting there. I've got a goal in the next couple of years to make that happen. And, but it's definitely, you have to have a lot of faith in God, I think, to be successful in entrepreneurship, because there's so much that you're just taking a risk on, and whether that's your name or financially or whatever. And I spend a lot of time in prayer and God, just let your will be done, man.
It's so funny, because a lot of our lives, it's, this independent idea, I could take care of myself, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurship is like a miracle journey where,
Yes.
I know for me personally, it was like, okay, what are we going to do now?
Right. Yeah.
And then a month and a half later, okay, what are we going to do now? But
Right.
here's the crazy thing, and for especially people of faith, it always works out.
Right. Yes. I love it. He's never early and he's certainly never late. He's right on time. And I definitely have that where I'm like, I don't have the patience sometimes, like, oh, come on, God, I need this to work. Right.
Right.
And then, but yeah, I love God's timing is real for everything, man. And I love
Yeah.
that.
It's funny. I'll be having conversations with this. Sometimes I'm like, do you really want me to live in miracle mode all the time?
Right. Totally.
Like,
Absolutely.
oh, it's crazy, brother. Hey,
Yeah.
so, we're a podcast where,
Yeah.
for men that have experienced trauma and pain and, all the hardships that come along with that. And so I want to know your story, brother. Like, take us back.
Yeah, I grew up in this, I would call it typical household. I played Little League. I lived behind this field, so spent a lot of time out there running away from rattlesnakes and, trying to pick up, treasures that I could find. My dad would take us out to behind dumpsters of buildings and we'd go dumpster diving as a kid and find what, just fun stuff, man. And, my buddy who's I'm still friends with from first grade still tells me, I'll be 40 next month. And he's like, dude, remember when your dad took us dumpster diving? It's just funny things like that. So, but yeah, I played Little League. I went to Sunday school. I was the kid who brought G.I. Joes with me to Sunday school class though. And I'd go sneak out to the bathroom and then for some reason, no one would come get me. So I just played G.I. Joes for the hour. But, my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old and I really didn't see it coming. I didn't realize that my dad was an alcoholic that whole time. He was very much a quiet alcoholic. I never saw him hit my dad or anything like that. And I think it was a lack of communication between my dad and my mom that caused that. And then when they got divorced, my mom immediately got together with somebody else really fast who was also an alcoholic, but he was very much abusive physically.
Yeah.
So I saw my mom get beat up quite a bit as a kid. Lots of blood. The cops were always there. My mom would never press charges. And then she decided to move us to Montana, me and my sister, who was 4 years younger. And basically, I was 12 years old when I moved to Montana, and I was told I had to live there until I was 13. And so I moved up there, and we lived in this area that was very remote. And essentially, it allowed her boyfriend to beat the snot out of her and not have the cops intervene.
Yeah.
And, we moved up to this house. There was 3 bedrooms. There was one for my sister, one for my mom and her boyfriend, and they had a child together. Well, I was there. And so they said, well, you get to live in the garage. And so they put up this plastic wall and there's a fireplace on that side of the wall. And I remember just winters stoking that fire and I would get really hot for the first hour. And then once that fire went out, I'd be freezing. I'd be under like 10 different layers of blankets trying to stay warm. And I did that for 2 years. And while I was there, I was 13 years old. I was brushing my teeth. It was about midnight. My mom's boyfriend and her came home from arguing or from out partying, and it was just me at the house and they were arguing, and I just ignore it, but I'm brushing my teeth and I felt like God just saying, man, you need to turn around. You need to look around this corner. And so I looked down the hall and there's the kitchen and then the pantry and then the garage where I stayed at. And as I looked down the hall, he was on top of my mom and he was just boom, boom, one after the other, like 5-6 shots to the face. And so at 13 years old, I said, how can I get this man off my mom? And I remember going up and grabbing one of those cast iron pans, the heavy duty ones from camping. And I played baseball. I got a pretty good swing. And so I just snuck up behind him and I just boom. And I hit him in the back of the head. As I hit him, the head split open and he was so drunk. He turned around and he was like mid-sentence, what the? And I hit him again, smacking the forehead, splitting his face open here, and still didn't knock him out. He stood up and he started yelling at me. And as he was doing that, my mom come out of nowhere and she lands like 5 punches in a row to his face and blood splatting on the wall behind him. And it was just insane. And shortly after that, I moved back to Washington, live with my dad. And my dad he rented a house for us, but then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. He put $20 in the cup and that was my lunch money for the week.
Oh, wow.
And I never saw my dad for like a month or 2 at a time sometimes. And so of course that led me to go and smoke pot or do drugs or acid or mushrooms, whatever I could get my hands on. I just wanted to I became this drug addict in high school. I barely passed, moved to Seattle out of high school and became, I would say, a hardcore alcoholic. I got into the music business. I got a
Uh-huh.
job with Universal Records where I didn't have to pay for any tab, and I didn't pay for any concerts for almost 2 years. And so I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week, living this rock star lifestyle, man, and managing a band. And I was working at Starbucks at night. And I remember this girl came into Starbucks to study one time. She doesn't drink coffee, and she invited me to this church event. And obviously I was not living this life of with Christ at the time. And I thought I was just this depressed guy who'd go home after Starbucks and drink beer or smoke some pot, and so she invited me to this church event that was tailored towards young college age kids. And I said, yeah, sure. I'll go hang out, see what it's about. And
Uh-huh.
a couple weeks later was Easter. And so it was interesting. I had a really good time at that event, but on Easter, I woke up on Easter morning surrounded by about 10 or 15 guys that I'd been out partying with the night before. Everyone was passed out. It was just me. I woke up early, and I felt God in that moment say, you're done, man. And I quit right there in that basement, gave my life to Christ. I quit smoking cigarettes, drinking, doing drugs, everything. Gave my life to Christ right there by myself. I called this girl up from Starbucks, invited me to that church event, and I got her voice, and I said, hey, I just want to say happy Easter. Hopefully we can talk again soon. Well, 3 months later, we're dating, and a year later, we've been married. And then we've now been married for 15 years in 2020, man. And so it's just been this crazy journey, man. It's been awesome.
Man, that is amazing.
Yeah, God's been just a huge part of my life, especially since meeting my wife and since giving my life to Christ. And I got baptized back in, I think, that first summer that we got engaged. And man, it's just been an amazing journey.
Man, that's awesome. Hey, I know for me personally, going through, a lot of the pain and the trauma, as a kid, very similar to yours, just a tad different. But, when I hit my 20s, I didn't know nothing about being a man. You know what I mean? Sure. I didn't have any mentors. I was just severely lacking, and I had God, I had faith.
Yeah.
But my life was still a mess, man. It was just,
right.
A disaster. How'd you kind of navigate through, okay, this is my new life now, and coming out of that old way, that old thinking, the old system, how did that play out for you?
It was tough because a lot of my friends didn't understand, I literally, and I love music, and I built up this collection of like 3,000 CDs, and I knew once I got saved, I said, man, I'm listening to a lot of music that's not positive. I listen to a lot of music that's not lifting me up. And I actually sold all of my CDs and paid for my wife's engagement ring. And so, but it was just, I had to remove things from my life.
Yeah.
I listened to people like Ed Milet, who talks a lot about, you have to hang around with people that have a higher temperature than you. Right. Yeah. So if I'm sitting at 85 and I want to hang around with people that are 120, man. And so I started finding people that were in the church that I could connect with, and I would meet with them and, have a coffee, once a week, and joining men's groups. And it was a new lifestyle, but mentally I made that switch. And when I do things, I'm very much full on, let's make this happen and let's do it right. And it took a while for my friends to kind of go, yeah, you're still a cool dude, right? But you just don't want to go out and party with us. But I had to kind of separate myself for a while to get close to God and draw close to Him before I could really feel comfortable going out and hanging with, guys that might go out to the bar or something like that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. I think that's key, is at the beginning, separating quite a bit. I know that we're supposed to be connected with other people, and no matter what their state and condition is.
Yeah.
But we have to be kind of mature and grown ourselves to be able to stand, because if we're connected with that, and then who's bringing who up, who's bringing who down, sort of scenario,
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to a brother just starting out on this journey? They're stepping into, this new lifestyle, this new way of living, new mindset, just everything,
I think it's all about being around people who will lift you up. And I think joining a men's group has really saved my life over the last 15 years. And I love getting in, just you could be open with guys, and obviously you got to find the right guys that will be a right